had a couple pills on a little dare, but now she's missing class and she's dropping her pom-poms. Nobody knows where she is, not even her mom. Everybody thought she was the all-American girl. So there goes the books, it's all about the score. There goes the doggy, life is such a bore. There goes the family, she's got a new friend. There goes the looks, this is the end. I guess she really was the all-American girl.
Pick up heroin and you'll throw away everything you love. Share your stories on Instagram with #heroin.
You're watching News 4, watching out for you.
You may remember this ad that aired during last year's Super Bowl.
And that's how you got addicted to heroin.
So it was a happy sounding song with disturbing images of a teen overdosing on heroin while his mother was unaware of what was happening. The National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse was behind that PSA.
They are now shooting another one, which will air during the upcoming Super Bowl.
After a successful showing at last year's Super Bowl, the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is producing another anti-heroin ad to air during Super Bowl 50.
A locally curated Super Bowl commercial on heroin got a lot of people upset during the Super Bowl this year.
Didn't stop the producers. They're making another one. Fox News' John Portsporn here this morning to tell us why and where. Good morning, John.
And this one, they hope will get as much attention as the one did last year during the Super Bowl. The producers behind this, they want to do the exact same thing, get you talking about the deadly heroin epidemic. The commercial is being shot at Wildwood's Lafayette High School, and members of the Lafayette Lancer dance team, they're extras in the PSA. The actress is the girl with the long blonde hair, and she is playing a teenager whose life is in ruins because of heroin usage. And the St. Louis chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is producing the 60-second sequel to its gut-punching spot, doing it the same way. They're going to air it during the Super Bowl, and it left many viewers stunned and some angry.
Last year we had 1.25 million people watch that commercial and pay attention to it. Some were shocked, some were appalled, but everybody had a reaction, and here a year later people are still talking about it.
And that's the reaction that they wanted, because heroin use is a reality and it's killing our kids from public to private high schools.
I love it. They may look like all-American teenagers, but the girl with the long blonde hair has an all-American problem. Her life is being ruined by heroin.
One more time, you stop your movement.
Here, that sad scenario is just theater being performed for a public service announcement. But the heroin problem is not fiction, which is why the St. Louis chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is producing a 60-second sequel to its gut-punching spot from the last Super Bowl that left many viewers stunned and angered.
On one hand, we were upset by the people who were upset by the spot, but on the other hand, we were heartened that the spot made such an impact.
Now the NCADA is getting the band back together again, creating a new spot. Members of the Lafayette Lancers dance team were recruited to be extras.
I couldn't believe it. It didn't sound real because we're going to be in the Super Bowl. We were so excited.
Last year we had 1.25 million people watch that commercial and pay attention to it. Some were shocked, some were appalled, but everybody had a reaction, and here a year later people are still talking about it.
4, 5. It is unclear what happens to the main character in that PSA, but it is likely something bad.
And that spot will run in the commercial break before the start of the second half of the Super Bowl, which is usually the break with the highest viewership. And just like last year, the cost of production and the airtime is being paid for by a corporate donor who wishes to remain anonymous.
Pretty powerful, something to look for.
All new at 10, Super Bowl commercials are all about producing something memorable. One spot that ran locally during last year's Super Bowl not only made viewers think, it actually made a few of them angry.
Yeah, Fox 2's Paul Shankman is live in Wildwood to show us why filming is now beginning on a sequel.
An inside look as a local company films another Super Bowl commercial, the tough topic the commercial is tackling during the big game. Plus,
exactly. Shooting the PSA today involves the Pom-Pom squad here at Lafayette High School. You can see they're still at it behind me. They should be wrapping up shortly, though. You know, this is day one of shooting. It'll be spread out over the course of several days. This year's PSA will be geared more toward young people. Last year, it was the parents they were trying to reach. Weissman says if they had to do it again, they would not change the first PSA. It exceeded their wildest dreams. It made people aware. It got people talking about the problem with heroin. While some were critical of airing the ad during the Super Bowl, Weissman says it was precisely when it should have aired. It's a time when viewers are not only watching the game, they are watching the commercials.
A local community health agency made national headlines last year with a provocative anti-heroin PSA that ran during the Super Bowl. This year on Super Bowl Sunday, the NCADA will air a new 60-second spot about the dangers of heroin.
Whether you are into the Super Bowl or not, many can agree that the commercials are worth watching. And there are some funny ads, but I promise you, on Monday, we are going to be talking about this. Last year, this ad by the National Council of Alcohol and Drug Abuse had everyone talking. It took on the serious topic of heroin addiction. It's a crisis all over the country, and especially in our area.
Plus, taking the fight against heroin to the Super Bowl for the second year. A sneak peek at this year's provocative PSA created by a St. Louis organization. Tonight on Fox 2 News at 10.
The group that floored football fans with its powerful anti-heroin message during last year's Super Bowl is doing it again. You may remember it. It showed that teenager overdosing and dying in his room. The local chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse produced that PSA, and today unveiled a new Super Bowl ad that highlights the heroin epidemic in the St. Louis region.
What's that smell? Heroin! And a somber message on Super Sunday, the spot that aims to put a dent into heroin abuse.
Howard Weissman, Executive Director of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, says a 60-second PSA doesn't solve the heroin problem, but does increase the conversation about a deadly nationwide issue.
Our objective this year is not so much to grab the community by its lapels and get its attention and say, hey, we got a heroin problem. Our objective this year is to incite some action.
Game day will also come with a serious side. Tonight, the message a local group will send that they hope will save a life. And new at 10, Super Sunday means the Super Bowl game and, of course, commercials.
But this weekend, football fans excited about the super spots will also hear a somber message.
And while the new commercial is similar to last year's, it was well received tonight by people who watched its debut at a private viewing.
Wow. It was dead on. It gave me chills.
Wendy Richardson lost her son to a heroin overdose. She says this year's PSA was, quote, spot on.
It's a realistic portrayal of what someone that starts down the heroin path endures, and the physical changes, the emotional changes, the personality changes that you see as they begin to lose everything and unravel.
Your first reaction really is just wow. I mean, you have to just kind of soak it in for just a minute, and I think right away I wanted to say, can you play it again?
The heroin and opioid crisis will once again be front and center during this weekend's Super Bowl. For the second straight year, a local group has produced a PSA that will air during the game.
Tonight at 11, a local organization's powerful message about drug abuse.
And that's how you got addicted to heroin.
A look at the latest ad set to run during this year's Super Bowl.
Well, a Super Bowl ad with a powerful message about the horrors of heroin.
The commercial debuted tonight before a crowd of people personally touched by the deadly drug.
Well, the heroin opioid crisis will once again be front and center during this weekend's Super Bowl. For the second straight year, a local group has produced a PSA that will air during the game.
And the heroin and opioid crisis will once again be front and center during this weekend's Super Bowl. For the second straight year, a local group has produced a PSA that will air during the big game.
You may remember last year during the Super Bowl commercial that shocked many, a mom discovering her son had OD'd on heroin. This year, the NCADA is airing this new Super Bowl commercial about the heroin epidemic, and they hope to get the same reaction and definitely hope to save lives. Do you think last year's spot is directly responsible for saving some lives?
Well, we know it's responsible for saving some lives. We know that from the calls that we received to our agency in the immediate days after the ad.
That girl could have been me 10 years ago. Whenever I was in high school, it definitely could have been me.
I mean, this is something that can only be characterized as a public health emergency. You know, over 730 people have died in the last 2 years alone, most of them young.
Give me an E! Give me an R!
The anti-heroin ad is set to music with lyrics that tell the story of a cheerleader who gets addicted to heroin.
She had a couple pills on a little dare.
Then appears in a daze as her life as an addict spirals out of control.
Now she's missing class and she's dropping her pom-poms.
Many people watching the debut of the spot in darkness,
There goes the family, she's got a new friend.
reminiscent of a movie theater, are moved to tears.
Kids are dying right now.
Joe Brennan's daughter was a cheerleader and is now a recovering heroin addict.
There's no grace in there. It's just a downhill, fast spiral to the bottom. And if you don't stop, you die.
Tomorrow, local leaders will hold a news conference about the area's heroin crisis. It's in response to this ad that aired tonight during the Super Bowl.
She had a couple pills on a little dare.
A lot of people are still talking about the Super Bowl today, but St. Louis Mayor Francis Slay says the most important minute of the game didn't have anything to do with what happened on the field.
He says it was the locally produced 60-second public service announcement showing the ravages of heroin.
You may have noticed this ad during last night's Super Bowl. It's a public service announcement created right here in St. Louis addressing heroin addiction.
You're right, and today local leaders will hold a news conference about the area's heroin crisis in response to an ad that aired last night during the Super Bowl.
The National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse says it wanted to air that spot because the heroin epidemic has not improved.
The NCADA has scheduled a news conference this morning to talk about the approaches of fighting heroin. News 4 will be there and have reports later on this evening.
Was last night's locally produced heroin commercial during the Super Bowl. Will it be successful or unsuccessful in saving young lives? We figured who better to answer that than Jude Hassan. He is the local author of Suburban Junkie, From Honor Roll to Heroin Addict. We thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Today you are a counselor. I mean, you help people. You coming on here today hopefully will help people. The commercial last night, does that help?
Sure, I think everything helps. The commercial brings about conversation, and anytime we can have a conversation about the issue and the issues at hand, it helps a lot. So they wanted to just put a powerful message out there to get people to reach out who need help, to get people to start talking about issues, and I think they accomplished that.
Today, leaders from across the St. Louis region gathered today to discuss the impact of heroin. John Henry joins us from Olivet.
That commercial was put out by the NCADA. You can see it right here.
Little 1-minute clip that we saw here and we saw while we were watching the Super Bowl probably was the most important minute, in my view, of the Super Bowl yesterday.
Now, Mayor Slay has seen the impact of heroin up close, as has County Executive Steve Stinger. We'll have more on that coming up later today on News Channel 5.
Leaders in St. Louis hope a local Super Bowl ad will give them the momentum they need to tackle a growing heroin epidemic.
Area leaders gathered this morning to lay out their plans for fighting the heroin epidemic. With growing awareness, the question is, what happens now? Here's Ray Preston with a story that's all new at 5.
It is frankly impossible to overstate the opioid epidemic in our nation and our region.
The barrier of using a needle with heroin is long gone. Today it is smoked, snorted, or swallowed in a capsule. Its purity is 3 to 4 times higher than it used to be. More potent, more deadly. In downtown St. Louis, Ray Preston, News 4.
And the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse is in the spotlight for its Super Bowl commercial for the second year in a row. You may remember the spot. It aimed to show teens all that they stand to lose if they become addicted to heroin. Well, this morning, the NCADA hosted a number of elected leaders to learn about policies that can be used in the fight against the drug.
A St. Louis organization in the Super Bowl spotlight for a second year with another ad about heroin.
Well, a St. Louis area high school is getting high marks tonight for the way it is spreading the message about the deadly drug heroin. Of course, the lesson was delivered on football's biggest night. If you haven't seen the Lafayette High School escadrille team perform at a pep rally, chances are you saw them in an anti-heroin commercial that aired during Sunday's Super Bowl game.
It is a powerful message.
The 60-second ad, which aired locally, focused on an actress who portrayed a heroin addict spiraling out of control as a dancer on the squad.
The girl letting her mom, her dog, everything in her life go. It's scary. It's sad.
The goal of the spot, paid for by the local chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse, is designed to encourage frank discussions about the horrors of heroin.
I hope that it becomes a conversation that people can have at the dinner table, that they can have with their families and their friends, because that's the biggest way to stop this issue is education and communication.
I really hope that it just brings everyone's attention that it's a very big deal in our community and it could happen to anyone.
The Rockwood School District agreed to allow the Spirit Squad to participate in the commercial after talking with parents.
If we're not talking about it, if we're not educating people, if we're not willing to discuss this, then the problem's only going to grow and get bigger and bigger.
The all-American girl.